In this Nioh 2 build guide, I'm going to be covering the Agile Archer build, which is a combination of Katana and Bow, and I'm going to show you guys exactly how to make this build. It's sort of a mid-game build, starter build. You can start making it early on in the game, but you probably won't finish it till around 70 or so, and it's meant for around that level of the game. We'll probably update it with a end-game version when we get there. We're getting closer by the day, so stay tuned for that. So the Agile Archer uses a combination of Bow and Katana, which is great because they both scale off heart and skill relatively well, giving them some good synergy there. And there's one really good set called Saika's Yatagarasu, which increases your life drain when you hit something in the head, gives you dodge key reduction costs so you can move around quickly and dodge, gives you melee damage, reduces the defense of enemies when you hit them with a ranged weapon, which is great, and untouched ammo 20%, so you're going to keep more of your ammo that you use. The way this build works is that you're going to be picking off enemies at range with your rifle in order to conserve bow ammo for close range, and you're going to heal yourself when you hit these enemies in the head for a good amount of health, so if you took some damage from one fight to the next, maybe you can heal that up in between fights. Once you've isolated your tough yokai or maybe a boss, you're going to start attacking its weak spot with a bow in order to debuff it and also rip off some ki if it was the weak spot, and then you're going to go in and play defensively. Katanas are a very defensive weapon because they don't have the reach that a lot of weapons have, so you can't be aggressive. You can't create an opening by trying to stagger the enemy immediately. You generally have to wait for the enemy to do something and react to it and then punish them. That's just the general nature of katanas, so this is a very defensive build. At least until you get some of the skills later on in the game that you unlock from the bosses, then you can play a bit more offensively, but until that point, you're going to play in a defensive manner. The stats for this build are heart and skill, no surprise there, as we mentioned those already, but you're also going to need some constitution in order to meet the requirements for the armor. Wearing light armor requires constitution and skill, and having extra heart does not hurt at all because when you get hit, it tends to hurt when you're in light armor, so giving you a larger health pool will prevent you from dying. Heart actually gives you increased ki as well, besides both sword and bow damage, so that's going to give you, a bigger resource pool to play with. And skill gives you a variety of bonuses besides increasing the damage with both these. One of the most notable ones is giving you more ki back when you ki pulse, which you'll be doing quite regularly. You can also put a few points into dexterity to use some of your ninjutsu if you want to get some more capacity, but it's not necessary. So when it comes to weapons, as I mentioned earlier, this is a katana build, so you're going to be using a katana for your melee weapon, and you're going to want either the Hacho Nembutsu, which is part of Saika's Yatagarasu set and is a katana, or you're going to be using some random katana that you like that has bonuses. It could be a yokai katana, whatever you like. Doesn't matter, it's going to be one of those two. Regardless of whether you use the Hacho Nembutsu, though, you will need it. It will have to go in your second slot if you're not going to use it because you need all 6 bonuses of the set, so you need this one. As far as recommendations go for, just individual swords, the Mantra Sword or the Tengu Slayer are both good choices. These are both craftable, and they give excellent bonuses. Or you can use a Yokai Katana that you find that has good bonuses that you like. Bonuses that you want on your katana are plus percentage melee damage and plus percentage ki damage. These are both great, and they benefit whatever stance you're using. We're going to be using mid stance a lot, although you do use high stance sometimes. And so it'll benefit both of these stances, which is just great. However, you will be using mid-stance a lot, so if you get bonuses that favor mid-stance, this is kind of second best. But you want to avoid really getting any swords that give bonuses to active skill damage early on. You're not going to be using a lot of active skills until you get these from the bosses later in the game. So because this is an early mid-game build, you're not really going to focus on active skill damage. This is something you want much later as this build evolves into an endgame build. Now, when it comes to ranged weapons, you're going to absolutely have to have the Raven Wing rifle in one slot in order to get all of the bonuses from Saika's Yatagarasu set. So that's going to take up one slot, and then your bow is going to take up the other slot. Now, when it comes to your bow, you're obviously going to want to prioritize damage. That's always important. But one really good bonus for this build is bow speed. This allows you to draw your bow faster, aim faster, and you want this because you're going to be using it mid-combat or in close distances. And because of the auto-target ability, when you draw your bow, it's automatically going to, put it on the weak spot of the enemy for a second that you're locked onto, and the faster you can draw your bow means the faster you can fire when that happens, allowing you to just draw and fire. So keep an eye out for that bonus, and temper one onto the bow if you can't find it on one. You can try and do that at the blacksmith if possible. It's not always there on the bow, but you can try. Other bonuses you want to look out for are range damage, because you're going to be fighting close range. You're not always going to be able to hit the head, so bullseye is not as useful. Bow damage at close range is always good. Untouched ammo to give you more ammo to use, and other bonuses that generally increase your damage and aren't necessarily a headshot. For the armor, as I mentioned already, you're going to use Yatagarasu armor, which is Saika's Yatagarasu set. This provides the bonuses I mentioned to ranged and melee combat, so it's perfect. It's light armor. In order to get all 5 pieces of this, you're going to have to do the Pervading Waters mission. This is a main mission, probably a few times in order to get the pieces. And if you're trying to get exotic versions, this is the purple version of it. Probably going to have to farm it even more than that. You can always try and get summoned on it if you want to speed things up. And you want to try and look for untouched ammo on these armor pieces as possible. You want to get your untouched ammo as high as you can in order to conserve arrows. As far as accessories for this build, accessories are always strange. They never have the perfect bonuses that you want. Sometimes they have things that are just good, like enemy sensors, so what bonuses you take is highly up to you here, but I would look for things that increase untouched ammo if possible, or bow or range damage. I have not even seen bow or range damage on one, I'm just assuming they're there, but I have seen untouched ammo, so you definitely want to look out for that. Now, when it comes to skills for the samurai skills for this build, really the 2 things you want immediately are the key pulses with medium and high stance in order to get these when you roll and to make it so that you can dodge away and key pulse without having to key pulse. You're going to find when playing this build that you key pulse all the time without meaning to, so you definitely want these first thing. After you have those, you're going to take Bowmaster, max it out, and Quivermaker in order to increase your damage and ammo with bows. And from that point forward, you're going to be dumping points into Deadly Eye in order to boost your damage with bows and rifles even further. I've got 15 points into this thing. It's still going. I don't know if it even has a cap, but you can keep pumping damage here. Now, when it comes to katana skills, the first thing you're going to want to make for is Swallow's Wing on the right-hand side of the tree. This is because it's going to give you an extra hit to your combo, and it allows you to move backward to safety at the end of your combo, which is generally the most dangerous part of attacking with a katana because you're close range. You get in 3-4 hits, you know the enemy attack is coming, and now you need to back away. But you hit triangle, you dodge backwards after your attack, and then you roll for extra distance. Once you get Swallow's Wing 2, this will become a backflip because you'll be wearing, light armor, which will put you even further away, and just looks fucking awesome. Additionally, picking up Flowing Shadow afterward, which is, the skill after Swallow's Wing, is great. It gives you an ability to use. And what I really like about this ability is that it's used from a defensive posture. You're holding block, and then to use it, you press triangle. So because this build is defensive in nature, being able to go from blocking to attacking instantly is excellent. Besides those things, there are tons of good passives in the tree, and you'll want to get Relentless first to increase your ki. This works well because it's on the right side of the tree. And there are other passives all over that increase your damage with grappling, and behind enemies you'll want to get these all eventually. But additionally, I like to take Haze because it allows you to parry and is mapped to a different button than triangle when blocking, so you can still use the other ability that I just mentioned. And katanas can be kind of hard to use against human enemies because of their range. A lot of enemies have longer, ranging weapons. So having a parry is very useful. And the one that you get kind of by default on the left-hand side as the very first skill has kind of like a long animation, which I don't find as useful, so I like using Haze instead. When it comes to shifting skills, you're going to want to take the Yokai Within and the Dark Within. These help with ki recovery when fighting Yokai, and in the Dark Realm specifically, where your ki recovery is slowed, so that's great. And Special Finesse Invigorate will increase your ki recovery after a burst counter, and Special Finesse Refresh will replenish a whole bunch of ki after a burst counter, which means no matter what you're doing, when you see the opportunity to burst counter and how much ki you have, you burst counter, because it'll basically just top you off no matter how much ki you have. When it comes to ninja skills, there are only a few jutsus that work really well for this build. Those are Tiger Running, Poison Arrows, and Stun Arrows. You can never have enough speed with this build, so Tiger Running is great. You're going to use those all the time. Poison Arrows help with hard-to-kill yokai and bosses, allowing you to set poison with your arrows. Basically coats your regular arrows with a poison effect, which is nice, so you can just keep up poison on bosses for a while. And Stun Arrows I find particularly good for co-op. They're kind of fun. If you can hang back on a boss or a yokai that your teammates are attacking, you can usually paralyze it for them, allowing them to get in some good damage and gangbang it to death. And you also want the passive Frugality, which helps with your ammo, because it'll return some that you use sometimes, which of course is ideal for this build. When it comes to Guardian Spirits, I like to use a Feral Guardian, but you can also use any other Guardian for this build. There isn't a requirement for Guardian Spirits. So I like to start with Ame no Mitori to get things rolling. This increases your running speed and ki recovery speed. Both are great for this build. Divine Rice you can use to trade for arrows, what's nice, but whatever, and you don't need the lightning damage. Additionally, another good Guardian Spirit to use would be Yusura Hicho for the ranged hit bonus to Anima, since you're going to be using ranged attacks a lot. Life Recovery on Purification, which you tend to do inadvertently all the time. And it also reduces your dodged ki that you consume when dodging. So you dodge a lot with this build, so that's always nice as well. As far as soul cores go, there are 3 that I really like for this build, and that are Skeleton Warrior, Namahage, and Flying Bolt. So the Skeleton Warrior gives you anima when you attack with a ranged weapon as a passive, which is nice because you'll be using ranged weapons all the time. Additionally, it can be used as a ranged attack mid-fight for cheap, which I love, because, you know, you can just bust it out and hit things with it and then go back to fighting. It's not always easy to get your bow out in combat, and this can be sometimes a very useful way to spend your anima. The Namahage Soul Core increases your damage against enemies that have no ki, and this is when you really want to get in a lot of damage on a boss or yokais when they're out of ki, so increasing your damage by about 5% when they have none is excellent, and also the skill is pretty cool. It attacks forward in a straight line, hitting pretty hard. The Flying Bolt Soul Core gives you anima when you attack with a ranged weapon, much like the Skeleton Warrior, and it slows movement of enemies when you hit them with a ranged weapon, has a chance to, like 25%-ish chance, which is good because you're going to be debuffing them already with lower defense from shooting them, so now they'll move slower sometimes when you debuff them as well, so that's a perfect dynamic combo between those two. And also the yokai ability of it is just not very good, so if you're going to use a yokai ability, I suggest using one of the other two and just using this one for the passives. When it comes to what clan you want to use for this build, there are 2 that work really well. The first is Mori. This gives you plus 20% bow damage and plus 2 max arrow count, which is great. We're using bow a lot, so that's good. If you find you're not using the bow as much and you're favoring the katana, then perhaps you want to use Nanbu, which gives you life on ranged weapon hit, which is just good for, you know, killing things and healing up outside of combat. But it also increases your melee damage when your health is full by about 5%, I think. 4%, 5%, something like that. So when you attack with that, you're going to, you know, do additional damage at full health. So between the ranged hit and the set that you're using, you should be able to top your health off in between combats, giving you more melee damage. Some final tips for this build. Because of the auto target weak point and the bow speed bonuses, you'll be able to use your bow in combat effectively. It works best in situations where you're outnumbered and you need to pick off weaker enemies, so try to use it there most. Or you want to use the ammo to debuff bosses or yokais, or even set poison for some additional damage, but you want to use your arrows smartly and not just use them, you know, willy-nilly at random. I mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again. Try to use your rifle to pick off enemies that are far away and conserve your arrows for close range combat if possible. You cannot raise your rifle and fire nearly as quickly as your bow in combat, so you want to use that ammo to get rid of enemies at range, and often a lot of enemies wear helmets and can't be shot with a bow at range anyway, so it's just better to use your rifle when you're trying to pick off targets before combat. Another thing I want to emphasize is using the skill Swallow's Wing with your katana when you're fighting in melee. Even when you're mid-combo, sometimes you can't get in a full combo, so maybe you can get in 1 or 2 hits and then hit triangle to use Swallow's Wing, and you backflip away to get out of range and stay safe while dealing a little bit of damage at the same time. It's going to do more damage than just dodging away. It won't get you quite as far, so make sure you dodge roll again afterward. Generally what will happen is you'll backflip off, dodge away, which will purify, and you'll have done a little extra damage, so it's win-win. Just a final tip here, if you find you're using the katana more and you don't really use the bow that much, consider swapping your armor up and putting 4 pieces of the Triumph of Tranquility set and 4 pieces of Saika's Yatagarasu set to maximize your katana performance. In order to do this, you need the rifle, dual swords, and 2 pieces of armor for Saika's Yatagarasu, and 3 pieces of armor and the sword of the Triumph of Tranquility set. You can farm this set, the Triumph of Tranquility set, you can farm it by doing the dojo missions for Way of the Warrior. I think all the ones after Novus drop this set, so farm that if you need pieces for it. Stay tuned for more Nioh 2 guides, including builds and weapon guides, and be sure to check out our review for our thoughts on the game. If you need further help, head over to the Nioh 2 wiki, and don't be afraid to add information that might help others out.